This guy is not the hero, he's not the villain either. He's the reason villains have nightmares. He finds a book made up of human flesh. Even his own demonic underlings, the literal forces of evil, look at it and go, yeah, maybe don't. Does he listen? Of course not. Before he can even crack it open, he senses something. A spy sent to assassinate him. Big mistake, because this absolute menace doesn't just kill the guy. He grabs him and starts slicing off his fingers like he's meal prepping for a demonic barbecue. Then, and this is where it gets worse, he pours the spy's blood into the book, and out comes a blue spirit, who for some reason is red. She tries to seduce him, tries to claim his body. But here's the problem. He's crazier than the demon in the book. He sees through the illusion, turns the trap around, and instead of losing his body, he adds her as another one of his underlings. And the craziest part? That's not even where his story begins. To understand how he became the nightmare of the demonic world, we have to go back to the moment when he was supposed to die. Fueled by a thirst for revenge and a growing bloodlust, our protagonist has abandoned the peaceful life his grandfather once begged him to lead. He burns down a village and butchers its inhabitants with a simple herb-cutting sickle because he is hunting for a mysterious man who caused his grandfather's suffering. Known now as the Scythe Killer Demon, he finds that shedding blood feels more like liberation than a crime. This lack of restraint has allowed him to build a notorious reputation in just 1 month, but his streak of violence is abruptly halted when a powerful warrior intervenes. Using a technique called 3-star power, this hero sends the protagonist flying with a single blow, instantly exposing the massive gap between a raw killer and a trained martial artist. The situation turns dire as the protagonist realizes this middle-aged man with a scarred brow is not just a hero, but potentially a lead in his quest. Consequently, the warrior effortlessly restrains him and expresses shock that a boy with 0 martial arts training could survive his strike. To prevent any future threat, the man drops his heroic persona and brutally stabs the protagonist in the stomach and chest with a scorched black sword. As the villagers cheer for their savior, the MC lies dying in the dirt, consumed by fury at the man's hypocrisy and the bitter realization that he found his target only to be utterly defeated. Following his brutal defeat, the protagonist miraculously survives his wounds, only to wake up in a high-security prison facing a gruesome public execution. As he is paraded through the streets of Jeongyang County, the local officials reveal that despite his young age and strikingly handsome features, he is considered the most vicious criminal in their custody. While enduring the stones thrown by an angry mob, the MC realizes that the hero who defeated him was a martial artist using a supernatural energy called Qi. This leads him to a grim epiphany. To avenge his grandfather and survive the monsters of this world, he must somehow escape his death sentence and find a master to teach him martial arts. To survive the night, he must rely on the herbal knowledge his grandfather instilled in him to resist a cloud of sleeping incense drifting into the dungeon. While the guards and other prisoners fall unconscious, the MC pretends to be asleep to lure in a mysterious intruder who has infiltrated the prison specifically for him. Consequently, when the stranger moves in to inspect his face, the MC launches a desperate surprise attack with his wooden restraints. However, his lack of formal training proves fatal once again as the intruder effortlessly parries the blow and strikes his pressure points, leaving the protagonist's body completely paralyzed. The intruder is shocked to discover that the sleeping fragrance has no effect on the protagonist, as his childhood spent cultivating herbs with his grandfather built a natural immunity to the toxins. This lead-like resilience captures the attention of the intruder's master, a young man named Mok Jeong-woon, who reveals himself to be the protagonist's literal doppelganger. Jeong-woon is the 3rd son of the Great Mok Sword Manor, a prestigious martial clan, and he proposes a deal. The protagonist will escape his execution by acting as a stand-in for Jeong-woon at the clan's villa for 5 days. To ensure total obedience, the arrogant young master forces the protagonist to swallow a black poison pill, promising the antidote only after the mission is successfully completed. To survive the immediate threat of the prison, the protagonist nonchalantly swallows the poison and accepts the role, leading the martial artists to believe they have him fully under control. However, the moment his heavy iron-lined restraints are unlocked, the protagonist's true nature resurfaces with lethal efficiency. As they prepare to leave the cell, he exploits a split-second opening to snap Jeong-woon's neck, killing his double instantly before the masked assailant can even react. By murdering the very man he was supposed to mimic, the protagonist has turned the stand-in plot on its head, leaving the stunned guard with a corpse and a cold-blooded killer who now holds all the cards. After the protagonist snaps the young master's neck, the masked assailant guard Cam nearly kills him in a fit of rage. However, the MC remains unnervingly calm, using his physical resilience and sharp wit to manipulate the situation. He points out that since the real Jeong-woon is dead, guard Cam will likely be executed by the Mok Sword Manor for his failure unless they change horses and continue the charade with the MC as the permanent replacement. Although guard Cam is terrified by Boy's cold-blooded cunning and freakishly dense muscle structure, The prospect of controlling a puppet via the poison pill's antidote is too tempting to refuse. To survive the immediate aftermath, the MC fully commits to the role, nonchalantly stripping the corpse to swap clothes while Guardcam watches in disturbed awe. The protagonist even suggests mutilating the real young master's body to hide their slight physical differences, proving he has zero qualms about desecrating his own doppelganger to secure his future. Consequently, a new, far more dangerous alliance is formed. The death row inmate officially takes the identity of Mok Young-woon, third son of the great Mok Sword Manor. Safely tucked away in the Mok family villa, the protagonist begins his transformation into the third young master by observing the scars left by the mysterious black sword. He realizes that while his monstrous healing factor saved his life, the gap in power between him and a true martial artist is still vast. Consequently, he decides to use his new identity as a cover to learn the secrets of Chuyi and martial arts, all while hunting for his grandfather's enemies. However, his freedom is short-lived as Guardcam places him under heavy surveillance, treating him like a disposable puppet rather than a partner. To survive this lockdown, the MC begins testing the boundaries of his guards, unsettling a female servant by requesting his beef be served raw and bloody, a chilling slip of his true, predatory nature. When Guardcam leaves to handle secret business, the MC attempts to walk out, only to be blocked by a guard named Go-chan. Believing the protagonist is just a defenseless civilian, Go-chan uses a joint locking technique to subdue him. This leads to a brutal reality check for the guard. Despite his inner chi training, he finds the MC's neck and wrists as unyielding as iron pillars. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist ignores the pain of a twisted joint and slams the expert into the ground with overwhelming physical strength. As he squeezes the life out of Go-chan's throat with an innocent, terrifying smile, it becomes clear that even without martial arts, the MC is a biological anomaly that cannot be caged. To gain his freedom, he must now decide whether to kill this guard or break his spirit to create his first true subordinate within the manor. Go-chan is left reeling after his confrontation with the protagonist, realizing that Guardcam's warnings were an understatement. The MC is a biological anomaly who possesses enough physical strength to crush a martial artist's throat without using a drop of internal chi. Although he momentarily loosens his grip, he does so only to shatter Go-chan's psychological leverage. To survive the threat of the poison pill, the MC reveals a terrifying secret. As a former herbalist who consumed toxic plants since childhood, he has developed a natural immunity to most poisons. Consequently, the deadly pill Guardcam used to enslave him is nothing more than a crude mixture that the MC has already mentally deconstructed into its base ingredients. To consolidate his power, the MC proves he is a natural genius by perfectly mimicking the complex acupoint striking techniques he saw Guardcam perform earlier. While he lacks the chi to permanently seal the points, the sheer accuracy and speed of his mimicry leave Go-chan paralyzed with fear. But this victory leads to a much darker revelation when the protagonist bites his own finger and forces his blood into the guard's mouth. Because of his lifelong consumption of toxins, the MC's blood has become a lethal poison that begins to liquefy Go-chan's internal organs in an agonizing display of dominance. Now that he has replaced Guardcam's shackles with his own, the protagonist smiles brightly, having successfully turned his keeper into a terrified, loyal subordinate. The Mok Sword Manor is on the brink of collapse as the clan leader, Jeong, lies dying from a mysterious illness that causes him to vomit black blood. Despite the lack of a formal successor, a bloody power struggle is brewing among his 4 sons. The incompetent eldest, the cunning second, the real third son who is now dead, and the overwhelmingly talented youngest, Mok Yushin. To make matters worse, the great Lady Seok has forcibly ousted the medical staff to bring in a shaman, believing her husband is suffering from a curse rather than a disease. This chaos creates a volatile environment for our protagonist, who realizes that his survival as an imposter is tied directly to the clan's stability and the life of the dying leader. To survive the inevitable purge, the MC interrogates his new subordinate, Go-chan, and learns that Guardcam is a top-tier expert far beyond his current physical capabilities. Consequently, he understands that brute strength alone won't suffice against high-level martial artists who utilize internal chi. Yet he remains undeterred by the news that he is too old to begin training. Realizing that the executioner Guardcam is already preparing to abandon him, the MC decides he must take control of his own destiny rather than waiting to be discarded. This leads him to a bold move. He orders the terrified Go-chan to lead him directly to the dying clan leader's bedside to assess the curse for himself. Along the way, they pass the training grounds where the youngest brother, Mok Yushin, is honing his elite martial arts. Go-chan warns the MC that the real Mok Young-woon was previously beaten half to death by Yushin for insulting his mother, urging him to avoid a confrontation that would expose his lack of skill. Consequently, the MC realizes that the manor is a nest of deep-seated hatred and sibling rivalry, but he remains unfazed, viewing the chaos as an opportunity to wash his identity and learn the martial arts he desperately needs to survive. To reach the dying leader, the MC slips past the strangely deserted security detail, unaware that Lady Seok has cleared the area to allow a shaman named Mayoshin to perform a secret ritual. Rather than curing her husband, the lady has bribed the shaman to magically extract the location of the clan's official seal and secret rank before he dies. But this scheme is interrupted when the protagonist boldly enters the room, breaking the shaman's spiritual threads and silver coins, just as the ritual reaches its climax. The resulting spiritual backlash sends Mayoshin flying, only for the shaman to be caught by the MC. As Mayoshin looks into the protagonist's cold, unwavering eyes, he is paralyzed with a primal fear, realizing that the boy standing before him possesses a gaze more dead than the cursed man on the bed. Interrupting the shaman's ritual triggers a catastrophic backlash, causing the cursed clan leader, Jeongju, to transform into a feral, possessed monster. As the protective red threads snap, Jeongju's dormant martial arts power surges with animalistic fury, unleashing a shockwave of energy that cripples the shaman and the guards. While the others struggle against the supernatural pressure, the protagonist remains eerily unaffected, observing the curse not as a mystical force, but as a biological entity moving beneath the skin. To survive the onslaught, the shaman pleads for the MC to restrain the possessed man, but the situation turns deadly when the curse attempts to jump from Jeongju's body into the guard, Go-chan, through physical contact. Faced with the curse rapidly migrating toward a new host, the MC realizes that traditional exorcism is too slow to stop the infection, choosing a brutal surgical solution over a spiritual one. Without a second of hesitation, he hacks off Jeongju's wrist and then his entire arm to physically trap the black veins before they can reach the heart or infect Go-chan. This cold-blooded pragmatism leaves the room in stunned silence as the severed limb writhes like a dying parasite on the floor. But while the shaman is horrified by the desecration of the clan leader's body, the protagonist's extreme measures actually work, as the removal of the infected flesh causes Jeongju's deathly pallor to finally recede. While the guard Go-chan reels from the sight of the leader's severed arm, the protagonist remains clinical, realizing that the curse is an intentional weapon planted by an enemy, so he holds a sword to the shaman's throat to force a confession. Terrified, the shaman admits that Lady Seok never intended to save her husband. She hired him to use the curse to magically interrogate the dying man and find the clan's official seal. Consequently, the protagonist realizes he is now an obstacle to the great lady's coup, making the life of the incapacitated Jeongju his only leverage against her wrath. Instead of letting the shaman purify the severed limb and end the ritual, the protagonist decides to seize control of the situation for his own gain. To secure his power, he orders the shaman to ignore the original plan. To secure the clan leader's secrets, the protagonist forces Shaman Mayoshin to perform a high-stakes, soul-pairing ritual, using a wooden doll as a medium to interrogate the dying Jeongju. Despite the shaman's fear that the powerful curse will overwhelm the doll, the MC demands the ritual proceed until the possessed leader reveals the location of his hidden official seal and secret letters within the apothecary's underground stone gate. However, the intensity of the curse eventually shatters the wooden medium, causing the sinister energy to lash out and attempt to possess a new host. In a desperate act of self-preservation, the shaman intentionally directs the escaping curse toward the protagonist, hoping to eliminate the fierce young master who has been threatening his life. The curse plunges the MC into a hyper-realistic mental illusion designed to trap his soul in a loop of grief centered on his dead grandfather. Within this dreamscape, he experiences the horrific slaughter of his family and the burning of his home, only for the scene to reset into a peaceful, tempting paradise. But the shaman and the curse vastly underestimate the MC's psychological resilience. Instead of succumbing to the emotional manipulation, the protagonist maintains his dead eyes and recognizes the fabrication immediately. To survive the mental invasion, he ruthlessly attacks the manifestation of the curse within his own mind, gouging out the eyes of the sinister entity while coldly mocking it for trying to use his dead grandfather as bait. The malevolent spirit that once crippled the clan leader discovers it has made a fatal mistake by entering the protagonist's body. While the curse expected to easily erode a young boy's consciousness, it instead finds itself drowning in a primal, murderous desire so vast and sinister that it transcends human limits. Consequently, the power dynamic flips instantly. The MC doesn't just resist the possession, he aggressively absorbs the spirit's energy, trapping the terrified entity within his own ego. To survive this mental siege, the curse begs for release, but the protagonist coldly refuses, successfully taming the high-class evil spirit and turning it into a tethered, summoned phantom that obeys his every whim. Outside the MC's mind, Shaman Mayoshin prepares to murder the unconscious Jeongju to frame the boy and cover his tracks for the great lady. But this leads him into a nightmare as the protagonist suddenly wakes up, perfectly in control, and accompanied by the physical manifestation of the curse, a giant, blood-soaked monk spirit. Realizing the shaman is a witness who knows the location of the clan's secret documents, the MC decides he is a liability that must be removed. To ensure a clean kill, he physically prevents Myoshin from using defensive hand seals and strips away his protective amulets, allowing the very curse the shaman once toyed with to invade his body and crush his life out from the inside. After confirming the shaman is dead, the protagonist discovers that his newfound mastery over the curse allows him to perceive and communicate with the demon monk. Although the spirit cannot yet exert physical force on the world, to survive the inevitable investigation by the Great Lady, he realizes that a simple explanation won't suffice for a woman as suspicious as Lady Seok, so he decides to frame the shaman as a man possessed by madness who attacked the clan leader. To sell this lie and appear as a heroic savior rather than a cold-blooded intruder, the MC takes a sword and stabs his own thigh without a single flinch or groan of pain. Consequently, when the head guard, Jang Myungin, bursts into the room to investigate the commotion, he finds a scene of absolute carnage, the shaman dead, the leader's arm severed, and the young master collapsing from a heroic wound. This leads the guard to lower his weapon in shock, falling for the MC's calculated performance of a selfless son who sacrificed his own body to save his father. To survive the scrutiny of the suspicious Great Lady Seok, he maintains his cover as a wounded hero while tasking the guard Go Chan with recovering the shaman's forbidden texts. Consequently, when Lady Seok arrives at the pharmacy to interrogate him, she finds a boy who appears weak and injured, though her deep-seated skepticism leads her to ruthlessly press on his open wound to test his reaction. Despite the excruciating physical pain and the threat of a bodyguard's blade at Go Chan's throat, the protagonist maintains his composure and decides to play his most dangerous card. He realizes that Lady Seok's suspicion stems from her failure to obtain the clan leader's official seal through the now-dead shaman. To survive this confrontation and pivot from a suspect to a partner, he drops his act of innocence and smiles directly at her, cutting through the pretense by revealing he knows exactly what she is looking for. This leads to a stunning shift in the power dynamic, as he offers her the one thing she desires, the official seal, effectively turning a potential execution into a high-stakes negotiation. The negotiation with Lady Seok quickly turns physical as she seizes the protagonist's neck, revealing her hidden strength as a top-tier martial artist. However, she is stunned when the MC remains completely unfazed by the life-threatening pressure, seemingly indifferent to the pain. To survive this encounter and establish his dominance, the protagonist commands the invisible demon monk to strike back, physically repelling the lady with a supernatural force she cannot comprehend. The MC escalates the demonstration by having his spirit phantom levitate and nearly suffocate one of her personal maids. This leads to a total collapse of Lady Seok's leverage, forcing her to abandon her aggression and listen to the protagonist's terms. He has no desire to become the clan leader, but he holds the location of the official seal that can crown the next one. He realizes that while Lady Seok needs the seal to ensure her son's succession before the leader wakes, he can just as easily offer that same power to her rival, the second son. Consequently, he refuses to simply hand over the location for free, mocking her for thinking she still holds the power in their relationship. Following the tense pharmacy standoff, Lady Seok retreats to her residence in a rage, realizing she has underestimated the timid third son. She deduces that Mok Youngwoon was the one who murdered Shaman Myoshin, and decides to retaliate by contacting the Phoenix Pavilion, the shaman's powerful organization, to frame him for the crime. Meanwhile, the guard Go Chan finds himself trapped in a double life, fearing the MC's inhuman nature while being pressured by guard Cam to maintain control over their body double. While confined to the pharmacy, the protagonist ignores the political turmoil to study the stolen Book of Yin Yang, learning that his new servant, the demon monk, is a high-tier yellow spirit capable of killing living beings. To test the limits of this supernatural weapon, he uses the spirit to physically overpower Go Chan, confirming that while top-tier martial artists like Lady Seok can resist the curse, second-class warriors are completely helpless against it. This leads the MC to look beyond simple survival, as he begins plotting to acquire even more powerful green spirits, to further cement his dominance over the manor. In a major betrayal, Guard Cam abandons the fake Mok Youngwoon and defects to the ambitious second son, Mok Eunpyeong, believing the second young master is the most likely winner of the succession war. To prove his value, Cam reveals a devastating secret. The third young master can no longer perform martial arts, a fact that would normally disqualify him from leadership. Consequently, Eunpyeong accepts Cam into his service, but immediately issues a mysterious order based on Cam's classified past, showing he intends to use the guard as more than just an informant. While his former allies plot his downfall, the protagonist focused on his own goals, successfully infiltrating a hidden underground vault beneath the apothecary late at night. To reach the vault's secrets, the MC uses his physical agility to bypass a lethal floor spear trap by navigating via holes in the ceiling. Inside, he finds a secret training hall filled with high-level martial arts manuals and fasting pills, suggesting the clan leader was hiding much more than just a political seal. However, the true discovery lies in a final, forbidden box containing a book bound in human skin and wrapped in prayer beads. This leads to a chilling realization of the book's power. The moment it is revealed, the demon monk spirit who previously feared nothing instantly collapses in a display of absolute terror and worship. The MC has uncovered something far more dangerous than a family heirloom, just as his spirit slave warns him that intruders are closing in on the pharmacy. The assassin Jo Il-sang was sent by the second young master to verify if the MC has truly lost his martial arts, but he quickly becomes greedy after finding the MC reading the clan's legendary secret manual. Jo Il-sang confirms the protagonist has zero internal energy and knocks him out, believing he has secured the ultimate prize for his master. However, this leads to a fatal lapse in judgment. The protagonist was only feigning weakness to draw the assassin in. Using the demon monk to paralyze Jo Il-sang with a supernatural chill, the MC launches a brutal physical counterattack, using raw strength to shatter the assassin's face and danjon before he can even process how a man without energy could strike so hard. To survive the political fallout and gain more information, the protagonist drags the unconscious assassin into the secret underground cave rather than killing him outright. When Jo Il-sang finally wakes up, he finds himself stripped of all sensation and hanging upside down from the ceiling in total darkness. The MC reveals himself with a chilling, predatory grin, relishing the fear he has instilled in a warrior who once looked down on him. Despite Jo Il-sang's attempts to use the second young master's influence as leverage, the MC remains entirely unimpressed and begins cold-bloodedly severing the assassin's fingers to break his spirit. To survive the torture, Jo Il-sang confesses that he was sent to verify the MC's loss of martial arts, a secret leaked by the defecting guard cam. This leads the protagonist to realize that his inner circle is shrinking, but rather than panicking, he views the captured assassin not as a political liability, but as a necessary ingredient for a dark ritual. When Jo Il-sang desperately offers his life in exchange for mercy, the protagonist takes the offer literally. He positions the skin-bound book beneath the hanging man and slits his throat, using the holiday blood of a martial artist to break the spiritual seal on the relic. The sacrifice triggers a nightmarish transformation as the cave walls begin to weep blood, and the fifth blue spirit, a century-old vengeful entity, is unleashed. After sacrificing the assassin to break the seal, the protagonist faces the birth of the fifth blue spirit, a high-tier vengeful entity that manifests as a beautiful woman in red. Unlike the lowly demon monk, this spirit possesses overwhelming power, immediately flooding the cave with illusory blood and telekinetically slamming the MC against the walls to force him into surrendering his body. To survive this onslaught, the protagonist uses Hagem to see through the spirit's sensory deceptions, realizing the blood and drowning sensations are merely high-level hallucinations designed to break his will. A psychological battle of attrition begins, as the spirit realizes the boy before her possesses eyes that have already grown accustomed to the darkness of death. When the blue spirit tries to seize his body by force, the protagonist reveals that he has identified her primary weakness, her tether to the human skin book. He deduces that while the spirit can manipulate his surroundings, she cannot directly touch the medium that anchors her to this world. To permanently turn the tables on this century-old monster, the MC performs a move that defies all logic. He bites into and begins chewing the human skin cover of the forbidden book. This leads to a horrific reversal of power, as the spiritual damage to the book's skin inflicts direct, agonizing pain on the blue spirit's heart, proving that the protagonist isn't just a victim of the supernatural, but its most insane predator. To survive the spirit's final murderous strangulation, the MC makes physical contact with her, which triggers a shared vision of her past as a warrior brutally betrayed and murdered by a shadowy figure on a throne. This leads to a profound shift in the supernatural hierarchy. By consuming the medium that anchored her to the world, the protagonist has unintentionally bonded with the spirit on a cellular level. The battle concludes not with a death, but with a forced submission that defies the laws of shamanism. As the protagonist recovers, he observes mystical red threads connecting his own body to both the blue spirit and the demon monk, signaling that he has effectively consumed the contract. To his shock, the powerful entity who once looked down on him is now reduced to a state of hysterical despair, realizing she has been demoted from a free, vengeful god to a mere summoned slave. By surviving the burning heat in his gut and the spirit's wrath, the MC has transformed himself into a living vessel for high-tier ghosts, gaining a terrifying new level of power that no ordinary martial artist or shaman could ever hope to match. After bonding with the blue spirit, the protagonist discovers that their souls are now linked by a red thread, meaning any physical harm he suffers is instantly shared with his spectral servants. This shared agony forces the arrogant blue spirit, whom he names Jeong, into a reluctant truce to ensure her own survival. Shifting his focus to the human skin book, the MC deciphers a hidden 30-letter code that triggers a physical reaction, causing the book to literally crumple and merge with his palm. Consequently, he realizes he has unlocked a forbidden technique called the Ritual of Attachment, a skill designed to forcefully pull and absorb external substances into his own body. To test this newfound power, Jeong instructs him to apply the technique to the corpse of the assassin, Jo Il-sang. By placing his hand on the dead man's danjon and reciting the decoded mantra, the protagonist experiences a surge of warmth as he physically drains the remaining internal energy from the body. This leads to a game-changing revelation. The MC, who previously lacked any martial talent, can now bypass years of training by simply stealing the energy of others. With a high-tier spirit providing reluctant guidance and a technique that allows him to harvest power from his enemies, the protagonist has officially evolved from a mere survivor into a supernatural predator. Guided by the reluctant blue spirit, Jeong, the MC uses his terrifying level of concentration to visualize his internal acupoints, successfully channeling the borrowed energy into a single strike that shatters a stone wall. This leads him to a dark realization: while he cannot keep the stolen power forever, he can use it as a temporary booster to become a lethal combatant. However, he notices a lingering cold energy in his gut that even the spirit can't explain, suggesting the ritual is changing his body in ways he doesn't yet understand. While the MC experiments with his new powers, Lady Seok hires a group of elite shamans from Gyeonggak to investigate the death of their colleague and eliminate the cursed third young master. Unfazed by the encroaching danger, the protagonist decides to ignite a political firestorm by burning the clan's secret martial arts manuals after perfectly memorizing their contents. He gives the charred covers and remaining pages to a terrified guard Go-chan, ordering him to deliver these remnants to the First Lady and the second brother. By destroying the physical books and revealing his knowledge of the second brother's dead assassin, the MC is intentionally provoking his rivals, transforming himself from a passive target into a chaotic mastermind who controls the clan's most valuable secrets. After Mok Young-woon's brutal execution of the second young master's guard, Jo Il-sang, the political tension within the clan reaches a breaking point. Guard Kam is cornered by a furious Mok Eunpyeong, who demands the return of his missing elite warrior within 2 hours or Kam will pay with his life. Kam intercepts the loyalist guard Go-chan on his way to deliver the burned manual fragments and discovers the suspicious documents after a violent interrogation. Despite breaking Go-chan's bones, Kam is unnerved by the fact that the second-rate guard refuses to betray the MC, suggesting that Mok Young-woon now exerts a psychological dominance over his subordinates that far exceeds his status as a powerless cripple. Desperate to find the missing Jo Il-sang and save his own neck, Guard Kam storms the pharmacy and confronts the protagonist with a hidden dagger. However, the MC remains terrifyingly calm, even as a blade is pressed against his ribs, showing that he has completely anticipated Kam's betrayal and shift in allegiance to the second young master. The protagonist mockingly reveals he knows about Kam's secret reports regarding his lost martial arts, turning the guard's own lies against him. By framing the situation so that Kam appears responsible for the death of the second young master's guard, the MC effectively checkmates his own bodyguard, forcing the traitorous Kam to realize that he is no longer the hunter, but a pawn in a much more dangerous game. Trapped between a dead assassin and a furious young master, Guard Kam realizes the protagonist has checkmated him by making his betrayal irreversible. Seeking a way out, Kam attempts to extort the secret martial arts manuals from the MC, even going so far as to slaughter every witness in the pharmacy to prove his ruthlessness. To survive this confrontation with a first-class expert, the protagonist lures Kam into physical contact, activating the Ritual of Attachment to forcefully drain the guard's internal energy. Although Kam manages to stab the MC and break the connection, he is left physically weakened and psychologically rattled by a technique that defies conventional martial arts logic. To finish the job, the protagonist utilizes his unique ability to command the supernatural, summoning the demon monk to distract Kam from his blind spot. The elite guard is frozen in terror at the sight of the blood-soaked spirit. He fails to realize the ghost is merely a diversion for a physical counterattack. This leads to a lethal irony. The MC uses the very internal energy he just stole from Kam to throw the guard's own dagger with superhuman force. The blade pierces Kam's heart through his weakened defenses, leaving the traitorous guard to die from his own power and weapons as the protagonist stands over him, cold and victorious. The dagger he threw was coated in his own toxic blood, a result of years of consuming poisonous plants. As Guard Kam collapses from the internal corrosion, the protagonist calmly dismantles the guard's last leverage by identifying every ingredient in the lethal poison he was given, proving he was never actually in danger. Despite Cam's desperate, tearful pleas to swear loyalty, the MC remains unmoved, coldly concluding that a man who switches sides so easily is far more useful as a corpse than a subordinate. He finishes the job with a brutal execution, choosing to keep the loyalist Go-chan alive only because the man proved his silence under torture. With the threat neutralized, the protagonist intentionally leaves the weapons lodged in his own body to appear as a victim, preparing for the political fallout that will soon follow. Before the authorities arrive, he uses the ritual of attachment on Cam's cooling body to harvest what he truly desires. While the massive internal energy of a first-class expert begins to dissipate, the MC discovers that the ritual consistently pulls a unique, chillingly sinister energy from the dead. This mysterious death energy coalesces in his abdomen, forming a permanent foundation that even the high-tier spirit Cheonggyeong watches with growing unease. In his residence, Mok Eunpyeong arrogantly discusses his plan to manipulate Guard Cam into total loyalty by using fear and forgiveness. He dismisses warnings that Cam might be a dangerous former assassin from a legendary group, confident that his psychological games will keep the warrior in check. However, his plan backfires spectacularly when his youngest guard, Hansing, rushes in with chaotic news. Instead of proving his loyalty, Guard Cam has reportedly slaughtered 3 pharmacy workers and nearly killed Mok Young-woon before fleeing. This leads to a devastating political trap. The injured Mok Young-woon has officially testified that Mok Eunpyeong was the mastermind behind the entire assassination attempt. By killing Cam and framing the scene, the MC has successfully shifted the blame for the massacre onto his brother, turning Eunpyeong's attempt at manipulation into a self-destructive scandal. The high-stakes game for the successor's throne just turned deadly as Mok Eunpyeong realizes he's been played. He originally planned to manipulate Guard Cam through a calculated display of cruelty and mercy, hoping to break the former assassin's will and force his absolute loyalty. However, his arrogance blinds him to the fact that his brother, Mok Young-woon, is 3 steps ahead. A frantic messenger shatters Eunpyeong's calm with news that Guard Cam has supposedly gone rogue, slaughtering workers and nearly killing Young-woon before vanishing. This creates a massive political disaster for Eunpyeong because Young-woon has already told the Manor's investigators that Eunpyeong ordered the hit. Even if the elders don't fully believe it, the mere rumor of such a clumsy, murderous betrayal ruins Eunpyeong's reputation among the clan's power players. Trapped and furious, Eunpyeong decides to fight fire with fire. He knows that Guard Cam belongs to a legendary assassin group with a terrifying rule. They never tolerate a failed mission. By leaking the news that Cam failed to kill Young-woon, Eunpyeong hopes to trick this elite guild into finishing the job for him, effectively turning a professional death squad against his brother. Meanwhile, inside the medical hall, Young-woon is secretly recovering far faster than any normal human should. He isn't just resting. He is trying to master the law of lotus tree transformation to finally form a danjon and harness the death energy he's absorbed from his victims, but he hits a wall when the energy he breathes in constantly disperses before it can take root. He wakes his terrified subordinate, Go-chan, to demand answers about why his cultivation is failing. When Young-woon casually mentions that he already killed the missing Guard Cam, Go-chan nearly loses his mind with fear. The realization that Young-woon felt and moved internal energy after only a few hours of practice, a feat that usually takes years of disciplined training, proves that he isn't just a monster, but a once-in-a-century martial arts genius. Despite this raw talent, Young-woon's body refuses to hold on to power, and the guard's attempt to help only deepens the mystery. When Go-chan sends his own energy into the boy's meridians to investigate, the connection is violently severed by a cold, spine-chilling force. This hidden darkness proves to be a death sentence for a traditional martial artist, and Go-chan admits that without a master's intervention, Young-woon will never be able to form a core. The boy realizes the death chai he absorbed previously is acting like a void, consuming any life chai he tries to cultivate. Instead of giving up, Young-woon decides on a gamble that would terrify the greatest masters of the land. He concludes that if his body is filled with death, he must stop trying to live and instead embrace the end by reversing his breathing and his very blood flow. This decision looks like pure suicide to the ghosts haunting him, and the spirit Cheonggyeong gleefully paralyzes the guard to ensure nobody stops the boy from destroying himself. She waits for his heart to burst or his mind to shatter, yet as Young-woon begins the forbidden reverse circulation, the room doesn't fill with the gore of a failed technique. Instead, a bone-chilling white mist pours from his lips, and he begins to draw in the ambient energy of death from the world around him. Madame Seok, driven by a cold fury to eliminate the young master, has summoned a powerful new ally from the ghostly spirit pavilion, a 19-year-old shaman whose rank far surpasses her predecessor, and she is ready to turn Young-woon's own supernatural protection against him. The tension spikes as Sak performs a forbidden ritual on the rotting corpse of the fallen shaman Myoshin. By awakening the lingering spiritual traces within the body, she confirms that Young-woon is indeed being aided by a powerful, vengeful spirit. Seeing an opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, Madame Seok authorizes a reverse sal, a lethal curse designed to reflect the spirit's own malice back onto Young-woon. This move forces the young master into a desperate position. If the curse takes hold, the resulting agony will be so great he'll beg for death before his heart even stops. Inside the warehouse, Sak begins a frantic rhythmic stabbing of the corpse with a talisman-wrapped dagger. Every strike is intended to tear at Jeong-woon's life force from a distance. However, this creates a new, terrifying problem. Jeong-woon is currently in the middle of a dangerous reverse chi circulation, a process that gathers the very energy of death. If his focus breaks now, his body will implode from the inside out. The enemy's threat level is higher than Sake anticipated. As the curse lashes out, the spirits guarding Jeong-woon, the demon monk, and the mysterious Changryong are forced to intervene. The demon monk takes the brunt of the assault, his giant spiritual form cracking and bleeding under the pressure of Sak's ritual. This forces Changryong to stop observing and finally act. With a flick of her pipe and a surge of overwhelming power, she hurls it back at the source. The ritual ends in a violent explosion of spiritual backlash. Sak is flung across the room, her body slamming into the warehouse wall as black blood spills from her lips. Her arrogance vanishes in an instant, replaced by a cold realization. She wasn't just facing a common ghost, she had just provoked a high-level vengeful spirit far beyond her ability to control. Jeong-woon remains alive, but the battle has signaled to the shaman that the boy is no longer entirely human. He is something much more dangerous. The air in the storage room is heavy with the scent of stagnant blood as Shaman Sak wipes a black smear from her lip. Her attempt to curse the vengeful spirit backfired, the energy reflecting off her target with a force that far exceeds a common ghost. She realizes she is dealing with a green spirit, a calamity born from decades of suffering that usually requires a team of masters to subdue. Sensing the leverage this danger provides, Sak immediately doubles her price to 1,000 silver niang, uncaring of the manor's outrage. To prove her power, Sak calls upon a hidden horror named Gyo. Though the guards see nothing but empty air, a chorus of rhythmic rustling begins to echo from every corner of the room. A massive, bizarre shadow stretches across the wall, a creature with a bird's beak and a snake's tail that commands a swarming army of insects. Terrified by the supernatural display, Madame Seok agrees to the higher fee, realizing that without the shaman's monster, the manor will be painted red by the spirit possessing the young master. Meanwhile, Mok Jeong-woon wakes in the infirmary, feeling a strange sense of belonging. He has discovered that while his body rejects the life-nurturing energy of typical martial arts, it hungrily drinks in the chilling essence of death. By circulating his chi in reverse, he can finally build his strength, but the trickle of energy in the room is far too weak. He realizes he needs a massive influx of death to truly form his core, and he begins to wonder if he should simply start killing those around him to harvest what he needs. The vengeful spirit Changryong watches him with a mix of disgust and fascination, as no living human should be able to thrive on the energy of the grave. She guides him, explaining that if he wants to grow stronger, he must seek out graveyards during the hour of the dead, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. However, their conversation is cut short by a haunting cry that sounds like a cross between a fox and a bird. Suddenly, thousands of insects begin to pour into the infirmary, swarming the floors and walls as the shaman's servant, Gyo, arrives to claim its prize. The scent of decay fills the infirmary as the floor turns into a literal sea of black, swarming bugs. This isn't a natural infestation. It's the work of a Gyo, a legendary evil beast summoned by a shaman to execute a lethal curse. Mok Jeong-woon realizes he's been cornered by Madame Seok's latest assassination attempt, and with his guard unconscious and the room sealed, his survival odds are plummeting by the second. His servant spirit Changryong refuses to help, mockingly challenging him to prove his worth by surviving on his own. The bugs are already devouring the wooden legs of his bed, causing it to sink into the writhing mass. Sensing the shaman Sake approaching with the beast on her shoulder, Jeong-woon knows he can't wait for a miracle. He needs a weapon, but more importantly, he needs a way to make himself untouchable to a swarm that wants to eat him alive. In a move that looks like madness, Jeong-woon bites his own wrist and sprays his blood across the floor. The effect is instant. The bugs shriek and recoil in agony because his blood is a concentrated cocktail of the poisonous plants he's consumed since childhood. The swarm is massive, and as they begin to take flight to bypass the blood on the floor, the pressure mounts. To bridge the gap, Jeong-woon uses the ritual of attachment to telekinetically pull a lamp into his hand, using the heat to ward off the flying insects. He then begins systematically slashing his own body with a dagger, coating himself in his toxic blood to create a biological shield. This gruesome transformation turns him into a living repellent, allowing him to sprint directly through the swarm toward the horrified shaman. Sak tries to retreat, but Jeong-woon is faster. As the Gyo beast leaps to defend its master, Jeong-woon uses his spiritual technique to snatch the creature out of the air by its throat. The swarm instantly freezes as their master is neutralized. Holding the choking legendary beast like a common pigeon, Jeong-woon finally smiles, having turned a supernatural execution into a total rout through sheer bloody-minded pragmatism. Mok Jeong-woon is playing a lethal game where the rules of the living don't apply, and his latest opponent is about to learn that the hard way. way. He is currently facing Sak, a skilled shaman who controls a physical spirit entity known as a Guyo. Most humans would die just by touching its toxic spiritual form, but Jeong doesn't just touch it, he grabs the creature by the throat with his bare hands. This forces Sak to launch a desperate magical counterattack, using a lightning talisman to paralyze Jeongwon's nerves. However, her plan backfires horribly. Instead of falling, Jeongwon uses his ritual of attachment to absorb the lightning energy and blast it back into the creature, sending the Gaio into a spiral of agony. This creates a new problem for the shaman as she realizes her traditional exorcism techniques are useless against Jeongwon's unique martial arts. While she struggles to regain control, Jeongwon's secret weapon, the demon monk spirit, reappears, fully healed and ready to strike. Sak is forced onto the defensive, but her real horror begins when she looks at her spirit servant. Jeongwon has discovered that Imamangjang entities are like batteries of concentrated death energy, and absorbing them could give him enough power to immediately form a danjon, drastically increasing his survival odds in the cutthroat Yeon Mok Sword manner. Desperation forces Sak to break the ultimate taboo of her profession. To save the creature she considers family, she falls to her knees and begs, revealing that the principal wife, Madame Seok, is the one who ordered Jeongwon's death and the theft of his secret manual. Jeongwon merely smirks, having already guessed the truth. But even after getting the information, he refuses to show mercy. He realizes that if he lets Sak go, her shaman organization will just send more assassins. This forces him to take a darker path. He continues to drain the Gaio until it's on the brink of death, using it as leverage to turn Sak into his own personal puppet. Madame Seok is waiting for news of Jeongwon's death, but instead, Sak arrives and publicly humiliates her. Under Jeongwon's hidden command, the shaman screams for everyone to hear that the madam tried to murder the young master under false pretenses. As Sak chants a final curse, the madam's own servants begin to collapse in agony. The peace of the Yeon Mok Sword manor shatters as the maidservants of Madame Seok collapse, their veins bulging and faces contorted in sudden supernatural agony. Shaman Sak has turned her occult powers against her own patron, using the lives of the madam's closest servants as leverage to secure her own escape. Madame Seok is paralyzed by fury and fear, knowing that if she strikes back, she will lose the people she considers her own children. This betrayal savors a long-standing alliance, turning the ghostly spirit pavilion from a trusted tool into a sworn enemy of the manor's principal wife. The chaos is exactly what Mok Jeongwon calculated. By forcing Sak to use a forbidden technique that shatters her precious ritual artifact, he has ensured she can never return to her old life. Sak is a cornered animal, forced to choose between her loyalty to her sect and the life of her spirit servant, the Gaio. To save the creature, she leaks critical intelligence to Jeongwon about the hierarchy of the ghostly spirit pavilion and the terrifying society leader who likely controls a top-tier demonic or diabolic beast. Jeongwon doesn't seem intimidated by the threat of these high-level entities. Instead, a disturbing smile plays on his lips as he contemplates the power of a diabolic beast. Jeongwon's cold pragmatism shines through when he finally releases Sak, ignoring his guard's warnings about the danger of leaving an enemy alive. He knows a secret that Sak hasn't realized yet: she was never truly free. As she flees through the darkness, clutching her dying spirit servant and nursing dreams of revenge, a familiar bone-chilling cold wraps around her. The yellow spirit, the monstrous entity under Jeongwon's command, emerges from the shadows to intercept her. The realization hits Sak too late as the spirit's presence overwhelms her, causing her spirit eyes to bleed and fail. Jeongwon didn't just let her go. He sent a nightmare to ensure she would never be a threat again. As the madness-filled eyes of the yellow spirit lock onto her, Sak understands the true depth of the monster she tried to manipulate. Madame Seok is drowning in paranoia as her plot to assassinate the third young master spirals into a public disaster. The failure of her hired shaman has brought the merciless fist, Outer Manor Master Sang Eung-baek, straight to her door with eyes full of suspicion. This relentless master of martial arts is the most loyal pillar of the Yeon Mok Sword manor, and his sudden scrutiny forces the madam to back off from her target. However, this creates a new problem for her as she is desperate to steal a secret manual from Mok Jeongwon before her rivals can make their move. Inside the medicine hall, Jeongwon is undergoing a transformation that defies the laws of nature. Under the watchful, blood-red eyes of the ghost Chongryong, he is steadily absorbing the dark energy of a ritual that should have killed him. While ordinary humans take years to develop a center of power, Jeongwon claims to have already formed a danjon after just a few hours of meditation. This discovery shocks the high-grade ghost, but a stranger anomaly surfaces when she tries to touch him. Her ethereal hand, which should pass through solid matter, strikes his body as if he were a physical wall to spirits, suggesting his recovery and soul are no longer entirely human. The tension breaks when Sang Eung-baek enters the room to check on the injured boy. The veteran warrior is immediately unsettled by Jeongwon's eerie composure, as a boy who was once known as timid and weak is now staring down a master with absolute calm. Suspecting that Jeongwon is hiding a secret or perhaps practicing forbidden arts, the Outer Manor Master loses his patience. He lunges forward using a lightning-fast technique to seize Jeongwon's wrist and strike his acupoints, intending to force his own energy into the boy's body to uncover the truth. However, this aggressive move comes at a terrifying cost. As Sang Eung-baek attempts to probe the boy's internal energy, his power simply vanishes into a void. Before he can try again, the air goes cold. Jeongwon speaks to the empty empty air as if commanding an invisible servant, and suddenly an icy, spectral grip tightens around the master's heart. The merciless fist is paralyzed by a supernatural force he cannot see or fight, realizing too late that the weak young master he intended to protect or expose is now the one holding his very life in his hands. Mok Jeong-woon stands unbothered as the outer manor master, Sang Eung-baek, strikes his pressure points to paralyze him. The attempt is a total failure because Jeong-woon's body naturally disperses the hostile energy, leaving the master vulnerable and terrified. Seeing an opening, the ghost Changgryong partially materializes and grips the master's heart, ready to crush it. Jeong-woon realizes that while the master is a powerful martial artist, he is completely helpless against the spiritual interference of his servants. The master pleads for his life, confessing that he only tested Jeong-woon because the boy's sudden rise in competence seemed suspicious. He admits he was trying to see if Jeong-woon was a legitimate threat to the family's succession. Jeong-woon cares nothing for the family title, but he knows that a living, suspicious master is a liability who could disrupt his plans to learn martial arts in peace. Killing him would cause an investigation, so Jeong-woon decides on a much more permanent and silent solution. He orders the demon monk to perform a possession, forcing the spirit into the master's living body. Despite the master's desperate attempts to fight back with his internal energy, Changgryong blocks his cultivation and dazes his mind. The demon monk successfully merges with the flesh, twisting the master's body until the original soul is suppressed. This transformation is a massive win for Jeong-woon, as the demon monk now has access to the master's memories and social standing, effectively giving Jeong-woon a high-ranking puppet within the manor. As the possession settles, the master's face regains its color, hiding the ghostly energy within his eyes. He bows to his new lord fully under Jeong-woon's thumb. While Changgryong is disappointed to see that the spiritual bond to Jeong-woon remains unbroken even after taking a body, Jeong-woon is satisfied. Mok Jeong-woon wakes up with a single goal: to master the ignited wood sword formation he discovered in the medicine hall's secret room. But he immediately hits a wall because his lack of basic training makes the advanced movements impossible to connect. According to the ghost Changgryong, he is trying to run before he can walk, and without the manor's fundamental techniques, the manual is useless. This forces him to seek out the only people who know those secrets, his rival brothers. Despite the warnings from his terrified guard, Go-chan, Jeong-woon heads straight for the youngest brother, Mok Yuxian. This is a massive risk, as the last time they met, Yuxian nearly beat the original Jeong-woon to death. Yuxian is a martial arts prodigy who has reached the peak realm at only 16, making him a lethal threat to anyone who provokes him. However, Jeong-woon knows he needs that foundation to survive the upcoming power struggle within the manor. As he enters the training ground, he is met with Yuxian's immediate hostility and demands to leave. Instead of retreating, Jeong-woon offers a dangerous bait. He pulls out a secret heart transformation manual, a treasure reserved only for the manor master. By waving this ultimate prize in front of the genius youth, Jeong-woon shifts the dynamic from a beating to a negotiation, risking everything to gain the power he needs. Mok Yuxian is a man living on borrowed time. As the bastard son of the Yeon Mok Sword Manor, his only shield has been his father's favor and his own genius-level martial talent. But with the manor master on his deathbed without naming an heir, Yuxian knows his ambitious half-siblings and the vengeful chief wife are preparing to purge him the moment the old man breathes his last. He has no money and no allies, leaving him with no choice but to swing his sword in a desperate, empty training cycle, until the one person he despises most ruins his silence. Mok Jeong-woon, the family's notorious failure, wanders onto the training grounds with a smirk that feels like an insult. He casually pulls a secret manual from his robes, the ignited wood heart transformation method. This is the manor's ultimate technique, a power reserved strictly for the sitting master. Yukian's heart races because he knows that whoever masters this book isn't just a martial artist, they are the next leader of the clan. Suspecting a trap, Yukian snatches the manual only to find it's a cruel tease. The first few pages are genuine, proving Jeong-woon has the real text, but the rest of the book is missing. Jeong-woon taps his head, signaling that the ultimate power of their family is now locked behind his own eyes. He isn't there to beg for mercy, he's there to make a deal. He claims he has no interest in the throne, but he knows Yuxian is drowning in a sea of enemies who want him dead. The tension snaps when Yuxian lobs a heavy fist into Jeong-woon's face, sending the weaker man sprawling into the dirt. Blood flows, but Jeong-woon doesn't flinch or close his eyes, staring back with a chilling lack of fear that unnerves the young genius. He realizes Jeong-woon has changed into something unrecognizable. Rising from the dust, Jeong-woon delivers a cold ultimatum. Either Yuxian takes the deal, or Jeong-woon hands the manual to the siblings who are already planning Yuxian's execution. This shift in power is absolute. By holding the only key to the succession, the family failure has effectively seized control of the genius future. Yuxian stands frozen as Jeong-woon leans in to whisper the new reality of their lives. The sword no longer matters because Jeong-woon is the one holding the handle of the knife. Jeong-woon realizes that pure strength won't win this fight, so he pivots to a psychological trap. He mocks Yuxian's lack of knowledge about his own family, turning the aggressor's suspicion into a weird sort of curiosity. By acting with a level of confidence a coward could never possess, he forces Yuxian to lower his guard and listen to a deal that sounds too good to pass up. The terms seem simple enough for a future manor master. Jeong asks for safety, financial backing, and a look at the clan's basic techniques just to confirm what he already knows. This request is a stroke of genius because it leads Yuxian to assume the father might have taught them different versions of the same art. Instead of smelling a rat, Yuxian feels a sense of superiority and agrees to recite the formulas right there in the open. Success follows as Jeong absorbs every word of the clan's foundational martial arts after hearing them only once. His memory is a terrifying weapon, allowing him to memorize complex qi circulation methods while his brother struggles through multiple repetitions. To the outside observer, it looks like a fair trade of secrets, but the reality is a death sentence wrapped in a gift box. The victory is absolute once they walk away, leaving Yuxian with a manual that is a ticking time bomb. Jeong reveals to his terrified guard that he scrambled the internal energy formulas, changing key characters every few lines to ensure anyone practicing them faces certain ruin. He has not only stolen the clan's foundations, but has also planted the seeds for his brother's total collapse, proving that in this manner, a sharp mind is far more lethal than a sharp blade. The shadows of the forest conceal a new type of predator as a high-ranking shaman from the ghostly spirit pavilion tracks the missing sec. He doesn't find a survivor. Instead, he discovers a literal slaughterhouse of shredded flesh and dried blood. This level of violence is impossible for a common spirit, forcing the shaman to use a forbidden soul-tracing technique to glimpse the final moments of the massacre. The vision reveals a terrifying truth. Jeong didn't just survive the supernatural hit, he crushed an ancient entity with his bare hands. This revelation changes everything as the shaman realizes the boy is either possessed by something ancient or born with a monstrous spiritual talent. He immediately signals for backup, calling upon a Gojo shadow beast with an eagle's frame and demonic horns, proving that the pavilion is no longer just investigating, they are hunting a potential threat to the natural order. Meanwhile, escort Go-chan attempts to follow Jeong orders by visiting a low-rent information broker, but he walks straight into a lethal trap. The boss of the den is instantly neutralized by a beautiful courtesan who moves with the precision of a master killer. Go-chan is paralyzed by silver needles before he can even blink. Recognizing the legendary lustrous jade flying needles, the signature technique of the continent's most feared assassin sect. The woman is Ha She-rin, the new sect leader of the Flying Kill sect and a living nightmare with a hair-trigger temper. She isn't there for a casual reunion with a retired subordinate. She has a high-level contract to fulfill. The survival odds for the manor plummet as she tilts Go-chan's chin up and reveals her target. She is there to take the head of the third young master. The peace of Yeon Mok Sword Manor is shattered when Ha She-rin, the lethal leader of the Flying Killing Society, slips through the gates with a single goal, taking Mok Jeong-won's head. She isn't there on a paid contract, she's hunting the man who killed one of her top assassins. This creates a nightmare for the escort guard Go-chan, who is trapped between his past loyalty to the sect and his current submission to Jeong-won. If he admits he's serving his brother's killer, he's a traitor, but if he lies, he's merely delaying the inevitable. Go-chan tries to play both sides by claiming he's only staying close to Jeong-won to wait for a chance at revenge. The society leader seems to buy the act and removes the paralyzing needles from his chest, but this is a deadly deception. In reality, she is in the middle of a ritual called the 100 Days, 100 Kills, and Jeong-won is marked as her 60th sacrifice. She used Go-chan solely as a tool to bypass the manor's defenses, and now that his usefulness has ended, she prepares to frame him for the young master's murder before forcing him into a staged suicide. Meanwhile, Jeong-won has spent the last 4 days obsessed with his martial arts training, showing a terrifying level of talent that shocks even the ghost Changryeong. His body moves with surgical precision, perfectly replicating complex techniques after seeing them only once. As he rests and shares a meal with a maidservant possessed by the ghost, his senses have sharpened to a supernatural degree. He feels a shift in the air and realizes the quiet atmosphere of the manor is about to end, prompting him to move toward the source of the killing intent. Back in the guard's quarters, Ha She-rin raises a dagger to slit Go-chan's throat, intending to end his life while his acupoints are sealed. However, just as the blade reaches his skin, it is snatched from her hand by a hidden force and flies through the door. Jeong-won kicks the entrance open, standing there with the stolen dagger in hand and a calm expression. This forced intervention completely flips the power dynamic, saving Go-chan's life, and bringing the manor's secret monster face to face with the legendary assassin leader. Mok Jeong-won stands at a deadly crossroads as the female assassin Ha She-rin realizes her target is far more than a naive young master. Although his aura appears weak, he just performed a legendary void-seizing technique to save his bodyguard Go-chan. This display of power shatters Che-rin's confidence, forcing her to seize Go-chan as a human shield. She demands Jeong-won kneel, using the guard's life as leverage to buy herself an escape route. But she fails to realize that Jeong-won rarely plays by the rules of mercy. The air grows heavy with an ominous presence as Che-rin senses something invisible stalking her from the shadows. Jeong-won offers her a single chance to walk away if she releases the guard, yet the assassin mistakes his pragmatism for weakness. She chooses to gamble on a lethal hidden weapon called the Extreme Killing Needle, a tool designed to pierce the strongest defenses. This decision seals her fate because Jeong-woon is not fighting alone. Chaos erupts when Chae-rin launches her ultimate attack, shoving Go-chan forward and firing the needle directly at Jeong-woon's head. In a terrifying display of supernatural control, the needle swerves in mid-air as if guided by an invisible hand, striking Jeong-woon's palm instead of his skull. Before the assassin can process the failure, a ghostly voice whispers in her ear, and the ground beneath her turns into a nightmare of rising blood and skeletal red hands. The spirit Cheongryong begins to feast on Chae-rin's terror, pinning the peak-level expert to the earth like a helpless insect. While the assassin is consumed by horror, Jeong-woon looks down at Go-chan, who is dying from a pierced chest. The guard's desperate plea for life moves Jeong-woon to experiment with a dark, forbidden ritual. Rather than letting a useful pawn vanish, he places a blood-red talisman on the dying man's forehead. Ominous energy surges from Jeong-woon's palm as he invokes a spirit summoning technique intending to turn Go-chan's final moments of resentment into a permanent, spectral tool for his own rising power. The void of death is cold and empty, a place where guard Go-chan believes his pathetic life as an orphan and assassin has finally reached its end. He expects silence, but instead, the rhythmic chanting of the man who ruined his life pulls him back toward the light. Mok Jeong-woon is performing a dark ritual, and though Go-chan tries to lash out at the imposter, he realizes with horror that he is now a translucent spirit tethered to the living world. This creates a terrifying new reality for him because he is no longer a man, but a servant spirit bound by a contract he never signed. Mok Jeong-woon remains calm as he explains that reviving the guard was impossible, so he opted for a summoning technique to keep him useful. Go-chan's initial rage quickly turns to pure terror when he discovers that disobedience isn't an option. With a single command, Jeong-woon can silence his voice or worse, perform a forced exorcism that would erase his soul from existence entirely. Faced with total annihilation, the former assassin has no choice but to kneel and pledge his absolute loyalty to the man he once cursed. However, the situation takes a bizarre turn when the spirit Cheongryong abandons the body of the female assassin, Chae-rin. The physical vessel is powerful but cannot withstand Cheongryong's overwhelming energy, leaving a high-level martial arts body empty and available. Seeing an opportunity to upgrade his new slave, Jeong-woon allows the spirit to forcibly shove Go-chan's soul into the vacant corpse. This transformation changes Go-chan's survival odds in the most humiliating way possible. He wakes up to find himself back in the world of the living, but he is trapped inside the body of a beautiful woman. While he has regained a physical form and the power that comes with it, he must now serve Jeong-woon as a cross-dressing phantom. The Yeon Moksword Manor is suffocating under an invisible shroud, as a high-level ghostly domain has turned the residents into a hazy death trap. Outside the walls, a mysterious martial artist and his spirit eagle watch in frustration, unable to pierce the fog that has already claimed powerful masters. This supernatural barrier marks a massive shift in the MC's survival odds, as the manor is now a cage where even the strongest are vulnerable to the vengeful spirits lurking within. Inside this chaos, Mok Jeong-woon has successfully turned his fallen subordinate, Go-chan, into a red spirit. Through a twisted ritual of death energy, Go-chan has possessed the body of Chae-rin, the granddaughter of one of the world's most feared assassins. While Go-chan struggles with the humiliation of inhabiting a woman's body, he quickly realizes he has gained the reflexes of a transcendent realm master. This power shift gives Jeong-woon a top-tier assassin as a literal soul-bound slave, though the bond ensures that if the MC dies, the spirit vanishes forever. The fragile peace of the manor breaks when news arrives that the manor master has miraculously awakened from his deathbed. This creates an immediate crisis for Jeong-woon, who was planning to flee before the master succumbed to his injuries. If the master has discovered the looted secret manuals in the medicinal hall, Jeong-woon is walking into an execution. However, the summons isn't just for him. His rival, Mok Yushian, is also being hauled to the main hall, suggesting a larger power play is in motion. Jeong-woon puts on his mask of a dutiful son and heads toward the confrontation, leaving his possessed assassin to clean up the literal corpses of their past. The stakes have never been higher as the MC prepares to face the one man capable of seeing through his lies. Every step toward the main hall brings him closer to either a total takeover of the manor or a swift death at the hands of a recovered supreme master. The manor master has finally awakened, but his return isn't a joyful full family reunion. It's a high-stakes power struggle. Mok Jeong-woon arrives at the main hall to find his brothers trembling in fear, proving that their father is more of a tyrant than a parent. Even the gifted youngest son, Mok Yushan, is visibly shaken, especially since his skin is turning a sickly dark red. Has been practicing the secret manual Jeong-woon gave him, unaware that the deliberate errors in the text are slowly poisoning his body. Jeong-woon plays dumb, watching with hidden amusement as his rival's desperation to surpass him leads to his own downfall. Outside the walls, a new threat arrives as the vengeful associates of the shaman Sak infiltrate the manor. Jeong-woon's ghostly companion, Cheongryong, senses them immediately and vanishes to greet them, leaving Jeong-woon to deal with the internal chaos of the family. Inside the sick room, the atmosphere is suffocating. The manor master, Mok In-dan, might be recovering from a lethal curse, but his eyes are still sharp enough to pin a man to the wall. While the other brothers cower and avert their gaze, Jeong stares back with total indifference. This lack of fear catches the old man's attention, marking Jeong as something far more dangerous than the talentless failure he used to be. The tension reaches a breaking point when Jeong bluntly asks if they are there to discuss the succession. It's a bold move that shocks his brothers, but it earns the Manor Master's respect. The old man reveals that he knows Jeong was the one who saved his life from an assassin, a fact that changes everything. Realizing his time is limited and his sons are already at each other's throats, the Manor Master drops a bombshell. The next leader won't be chosen by birthright or favoritism. Instead, he declares a test to determine the successor, giving Jeong a formal shot at the throne and forcing the brothers into a direct, deadly competition for survival. Outside the manor, two mysterious figures watch from the shadows, prepared to strike. They carry a finger-sized seal and speak of a demonic puppet and a powerful diviner who has interfered with their plans. For the Mok family inside, this unknown threat is moving fast, and the manor is no longer safe. The youngest Yuxian is a combat genius and assumes a martial arts duel will hand him the victory. Meanwhile, the second son, Eunpyeong, feels cheated by his father's blatant favoritism toward the monstrous youngest. However, the Manor Master clarifies that the test isn't just about raw strength, it's about the qualities of a leader. This gives the less powerful brothers a glimmer of hope, but the biggest shock comes from Jeong. He flatly refuses to take the test, claiming he lacks the merit and the lineage to lead. He just wants to master his martial arts and leave this place behind, but his attempt to bow out backfires. The Manor Master reveals his bandaged, severed arm and publicly credits Jeong for stopping the assassin who maimed him. By Jeongwon's own logic that merit earns the right to lead, he is now a top candidate. Jeong is annoyed by the unwanted attention until he spots a specific scar on his father's side. It matches the exact mark he has been searching for, instantly changing his goal from escaping the manor to investigating his father's past. Suddenly, the tension snaps as alarms blare through the halls. An enemy raid has bypassed the perimeter, throwing the succession talks into chaos. While the other brothers panic, the youngest Yuxian realizes something terrifying. Jeong, the supposed weakling, sensed the assassin's presence even before the Manor Master did. This forces a new reality. Jeong is hiding a level of power that could change the survival odds for everyone in the manor. The Yeon Mok Sword Manor is a slaughterhouse, and Mok Jeong is the only one smiling. While masked invaders tear through the outer defenses, a desperate shaman named Mogo huddles in the shadows, bleeding out from a back wound that his concealment spells can't hide. He's a professional assassin, but he's just realized he's hunted by a monster from the Primal Killing Pavilion. A high-level shaman who can shatter illusions with a single strike. This new enemy doesn't just find Mogo. He paralyzes him using only hand seals, proving his mastery is at the terrifying moon level or higher. As the attacker grips Mogo's face, the truth comes out. The Primal Killing Pavilion has officially broken the ancient shaman neutrality to join the war, and they aren't leaving any witnesses alive. In the center of the estate, the sound of clashing steel wakes the Mok family. Manor Master Mok In-dan, still recovering from his mysterious illness, draws his sword with his remaining good hand to lead a desperate countercharge. His presence reignites the warriors' morale, turning the chaotic retreat into a bloody stand. But while his family fights for survival, Mok Jeong sees a different kind of opportunity. He slips away from the front lines not to escape but to feast. The air is thick with the energy of death from the falling soldiers, and Jeong sits cross-legged amidst the carnage to absorb it all. This choice forces his spirit servant, Go-chan, into a frantic defensive position. As Jeong meditates, the spirit of the demon monk reappears in a panic, having already lost his possessed body to a new threat. The situation takes a turn for the worse when a scarred giant with a massive Taoist sword leaps onto the scene. This man is the one who crushed the demon monk, and his aura is so overwhelming that even the seasoned Go-chan feels his instincts screaming in terror. Jeong is currently vulnerable and deep in his trance, but a master of this caliber is closing in fast, and the price of his greed might be his life. Go-chan, possessing the high-tier body of Ha She-rin, realizes he is outmatched the moment the stranger closes the distance in a few impossible strides. Desperate to buy Jeong time, Go-chan unleashes the flying kill martial arts, but his windmills of kicks hit nothing but air. The scarred man doesn't even draw his massive Taoist sword to counter. He simply shatters Go-chan's defense with a casual fist to the gut. The blow is so heavy it sends Go-chan flying 15 meters, yet the lack of pain in his possessed body only highlights how detached he is from his own survival. Just as the scarred man prepares to finish them, the Manor Master, Mok In-dan, staggers from his sickbed to join the fray. Even with a desperate downward strike, the weakened master is shoved back, proving that the Yeon Mok Sword Manor is effectively defenseless. The true terror is revealed when the scarred man identifies himself as Sun Yun, the Brightblade King of the Heaven and Earth Society. This legendary organization is one of the three pillars of the Central Plains, known for a ruthlessness that once nearly unified the martial world through blood. Sun Yun isn't here for a random raid, he's here to reclaim a stolen treasure. Facing total annihilation, Mok In-dan is forced to surrender his pride. He reveals the secret location of a hidden box tucked away in a trapped underground passage beneath the medicinal hall. But as the cultists move to claim their prize, Jeong remains locked in his trance, unknowingly absorbing the very energy of the massacre that brought the Heaven and Earth Society to his doorstep. The atmosphere is suffocating, but for Mok Jeong-woon, the cessation of violence is actually a disappointment. He thrives on the death energy of the fallen, and the current standstill is starving his progress. While his father, the Manor Master, trembles at the thought of the Heaven and Earth Society's wrath, Jeong-woon is already several steps ahead, weaving a web of betrayal to ensure his own survival and eliminate his enemies in one stroke. The danger peaks when a masked subordinate returns from the hall's underground with a talisman-covered box. The Manor Master is initially relieved, believing the exchange will end the crisis, but this relief turns to pure horror when the box is opened. Instead of a priceless manual, it contains a single silver and jade earring. This creates a lethal misunderstanding as the Brightblade King perceives this as a direct insult to his organization. The air explodes with killing intent, and the Heaven and Earth Society draws their blades, ready to slaughter everyone in the manor for this perceived trickery. However, the chaos is exactly what Jeong-woon planned. He publicly identifies the earring as belonging to Lady Seok, his treacherous stepmother, effectively painting a target on her back. This forces a wedge between the Manor Master and his wife, especially after Jeong-woon reveals her secret plot to use a shaman to assassinate his father. By placing her jewelry in the box, Jeong-woon hasn't just protected the manual, he has transformed the manor's greatest internal threat into a sacrificial lamb to appease the enemy. This bold move completely shifts the power dynamic. The Manor Master is left reeling, realizing his son is far more calculating and cold-blooded than he ever imagined. Jeong-woon leans in, whispering like a demon, suggesting that sacrificing one treacherous woman to save the entire clan is a small price to pay. Jeong-woon is no longer just a son to the Manor Master. He is a monster wearing a human face. He stands amidst the chaos with a cold smile, using the life-or-death crisis of his own clan as a bargaining chip to extract secrets from his father. The Manor Master is forced to realize that Jeong-woon's prank with the earring wasn't just a failure, it was a trap designed to ignite total internal war. By framing his brothers and stepmother, Jeong-woon has turned the manor into a pit of vipers, where everyone is too busy pointing fingers to realize who is actually holding the knife. The pressure finally breaks the Manor Master, who reveals the origin of his old wound, a legendary figure known as the Ghost Blade. But before the truth can fully surface, a new player enters the fray. Shaman Jo, a powerful mystic from the Heaven and Earth Society, arrives with bells that ring on their own. With a single explosive spell, he rips the demon monk's spirit out of its host, leaving the manor's guards convulsing on the ground. The shaman moves in for the kill, launching a magically charged staff to obliterate the spirit once and for all. But Jeong-woon isn't about to let his valuable source of death energy be destroyed. In a move that stuns both the warriors and the mystics, he snatches the enchanted staff out of the air with his bare hands. As the dust settles, the shaman realizes the terrifying truth. This 17-year-old boy isn't just a martial artist. He can see the world of the dead. Jeong-woon has officially stepped out of the shadows, and now both the living and the spirits have a reason to fear him.